So I moved to Seattle. In August of 2021, I basically packed up my life into 3 suitcases and moved across my country and then into another one. And the most stressful part of it all was finding a place to live. So in this video, I'm going to give you some tips on how to move to a different city, and I guess in my case, a different country. Rent in Seattle and basically everywhere is really expensive. And the key to moving out and not being down bad is having a budget. Now, I know a common rule of thumb is that the max that you should spend on any living situation is 30% of your take-home pay. I realize for the majority of people, this is unrealistic. So if you want to move out and not spend all of your money on rent, you have to determine what is important to you and what you can, compromise on. For example, after 3 years of living with 6 or more roommates, I decided that I wanted to live on my own for a bit. On top of that, I wanted to be close to transit. I wanted to have air conditioning, a regular sized kitchen, laundry in the unit, and I wanted my rent to be less than $1,600 a month. Everything else like amenities, new appliances, hardwood, carpet, all that stuff didn't really matter to me. So after I created my dream board, I spent all my free time looking online and I finally found my dream apartment. Just kidding. It took me all of 5 minutes to realize that my dream apartment was only just a dream. First of all, Seattle apartments don't really have AC like that. And second of all, Seattle's a really expensive city and I didn't expect it to be as much as it was when I started looking. So after doing a little bit more research on the different neighborhoods in Seattle and what the average rent price was, I upped my budget to $1,800 and I decided that AC and laundry and unit weren't really that important to me. So after you have your revised dream board and a budget, I think you can actually start looking for an apartment. And I think you can break that down into 3 separate steps. For finding an apartment, you can use sites like Trulia, Zillow, PadMapper, Apartments.com, or even Craigslist. But this one scares me a bit. You can start this process months before you move just to get some research and figure out what the area is like. But I wouldn't recommend actually booking any appointments until maybe a week out. Now, once you start finding apartments that you like, I would recommend setting up a very simple spreadsheet to keep track of everything. Like the addresses, the square footage, the rent cost, utility cost, and other notes that you may have about that place. Now would also be a great time to look up the apartment building or the property manager on Google just to make sure they're not sketchy or there's no bed bugs or anything like that. Now that you booked some viewings, it's time to go view some apartments. Now, I viewed 20 apartments within the span of 4 days just because I really needed to find a place. And one thing I really recommend you doing is videotaping all of the apartments and make sure to ask questions, because once you go to the next place, you're going to forget about all that stuff. All the apartments that I looked at were in the Capitol Hill neighborhood because based off my research, it looked like a very walkable area with good access to transit and with lots of stuff going on. It's also where all the bars and the young people are in Seattle, and I'm a raging alcoholic. This was the first of many apartments that I saw. This one was 500 square feet and it was a 1-bedroom on the first floor. The rent was $1,450 plus metered utilities, which I estimate to be around $100. What I liked about this place was the price and the fact that it was a 1-bedroom. The rent was decent, but the fact that it was a ground unit with little light and had carpets were all really big turnoffs for me. The next place that I saw I very heavily considered getting. This is a 4th floor studio that was around 450 square feet and had this super vintage vibe. The rent was $1,325 including utilities, which is stupid cheap for a studio in Seattle. What I really liked about this place was the vibe and of course the cost. This apartment building was an early 1900s hotel that was converted to an apartment, and the property manager really tried to preserve that vintage vibe rather than gut everything and make it new, which gives the place a lot of character. But what I didn't like about this place was how small and dated the kitchen was. I cooked the majority of my meals, so I knew that I needed a place that had a bigger and more modern kitchen that I could use. I was also worried about the internet at that place. Since I was working from home a lot, I wanted a place that had really good internet, and the infrastructure in that place wasn't looking too great, so that was another turnoff for me. This next place, I knew was way out of my budget, but I just saw for funsies. This apartment had lots of nice amenities like a gym, a locker for packages, laundry in the unit, and all new appliances. The apartment was a 490 square foot sectioned off studio for $1,886 plus utilities, which is well over my budget. What I liked about this place was the amenities and the community that they built within the complex. The appliances and stuff like that were nice, but not really a huge factor to me. Even though it was 490 square feet, which is bigger than some of the other places that I saw, it still felt small because of the layout, which I didn't like. What I noticed about looking for apartments in Seattle is that the newer buildings usually have really nice appliances and hardwood floors and amenities and stuff like that, but are usually pretty small. And all the older places usually don't have all that stuff and are usually bigger and actually cost less. This next place is the one that I ended up choosing. This apartment is 625 square feet, 1-bedroom for $1,670 including utilities. What I really liked about this place was the separation between the different spaces in the apartment. The kitchen and the dining area was sectioned off by this big wall arc thing, and there's also a big living space where I can have my work from home setup and a lounging area. This sectioning combined with the really high ceilings make the space look a lot bigger than it really is. Then finally, we have a pretty big bedroom with a nice bathroom as well. On top of that, it has really nice laminate flooring and also gets a decent amount of natural sunlight from the east facing window. That is when the sun comes out in Seattle. And after seeing this apartment and a couple others, I decided that this one's probably the one that I was going to take and cancel the rest of my viewings. So once you find the apartment that you actually want to lease, you have to start the application process, which is basically signing a bunch of documents, doing some background checks, and sending out security deposits. Since I've never lived in the US, I've never had a social security number, which means they couldn't run these background checks on me and they couldn't check my taxes and stuff like that. And because of that, I had to pay a much higher security deposit than normal. So normally the security deposit for a place like this would be half of the month's rent, but I ended up having to pay a full month's rent for the security deposit instead of paying half. Now, after all said and done and you pay your security deposit and everything checks out, you should have the keys to your brand new apartment. For me, I found, signed, and moved into this place in 3 days out of necessity. And after living here for a month, I have to say that I'm really happy with this place. Once you factor in the cost, location, and size, I think I got a really good deal, and I'm pretty sure that they had a COVID special going on. Now, this is the part of the video where you're probably gonna say, Kang, why on earth do you live in such a big apartment? Why didn't you get 15 roommates and live in the cheapest place possible? Well, there are a bunch of reasons for that, but the main one is the mental health aspect. COVID has taught us how important it is to have a place that you can really call home. And part of that is having work, leisure, and sleep separation. And that separation is one of the big reasons where I got a 1-bedroom over a studio. But for the majority of people, rent is probably going to be your highest living expense per month by far. And striking a balance between, having a place that you can call home and saving money is really the hard part about moving out. But don't get me wrong, I realize how lucky I am to be able to afford a place like this and actually be able to choose which apartment I want and not just pick a place based off of the price, which unfortunately I know a lot of people don't really have the option to do. But if you're still on the fence about moving out, you can watch this video right here where I go over the pros and cons of moving out.